Discussing it with us next is Reese, Everson, a women's rights advocate and also founder of Babe's Guide to Winning in the Workplace. Also political commentator Jeff Charles, who's a contributor to the websites Red Slate and Liberty Nation. Both welcome to RT. Reese, if I could start with you. Is it fair to say that racist remarks are treated differently depending on the race saying them and who they're aimed at? And is that helpful?
I don't believe it's about the race of the person that's saying it. I do believe that the intention behind or even the experience behind the person that's responding and their intention really matters. For instance, when you have a professor who's advocating against reparations in a classroom of students and saying that, you know, Black people don't deserve reparations and that they may have enjoyed slavery and all kinds of crazy things, you have a person who's European, who was a part of the group that actually imposed the pain of racism, slavery, and all of that. You have that professor then advocating for white supremacy. On the flip side, when you have a student saying, I, as a student in America right now, cannot seem to grapple with all of the things that I'm experiencing and seeing, whether it's maybe looking on TV and seeing the Derek Chauvin trial where a Black man was murdered or several injustices and saying, I don't know how to come to terms with that. And he's responding, then that's a different intention. And I think it should be handled differently.
Jeff, the video that we showed quoting that Black student and her private thoughts, which were shared on the internet, whatever her thoughts were, should the university have intervened to at least try and smooth things out, explain things, educate?
I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a conversation, but the bottom line is that the notion that somebody should be fired from their jobs or even taken out of school because they express views that make people feel uncomfortable is absurd. Regardless of whether I agree with reparations or regardless of whether I agree with what the student says, I always lean towards free speech. People should be able to say what they need to say without having to worry about their livelihood or worry about their school career. I'm not sure what was going on in the student's life. It was definitely a lot more than just saying, oh, this is my experience. She said, I hate white people. You know what? She has the right to say that. I don't have to agree with it. You don't have to agree with it. But the notion that she should be punished or she should be given a free pass when you're going to fire a professor for arguing a political position is absurd. You should treat it the same way. And again, this doesn't mean that I think that people should be fired or should be punished for expressing uncomfortable views. People should be allowed to say what they need to say.
Reese, is it not better to have the conversation than to cancel?
Well, we definitely need to use these instances as moments for education. There's a quote from James Baldwin that says, to walk around Black in this country and to be relatively conscious is to be in a state of rage almost always. So to respond to that young person who's experiencing, and basically maybe for the first time, I mean, college is one of the first times for many people that they're confronted with the issue of racism in America. And to say, you know, we need to address this, and as a university, let's provide a forum or maybe a way so that we can help this young person unpack the world in which they find themselves in. I think it would be a wonderful tool. However, we cannot allow professors on the flip side to use the platform of teaching to talk down to, denigrate, and basically invalidate people who are paying paying tuition to attend that university. And that's the discrepancy here. But I absolutely support that we find tools for these young people so that they can come to terms with the world we find ourselves in.
Jeff, does it put the universities in an almost impossible position in trying to have these difficult conversations? We're in such an emotionally charged time, especially over the past 12 months, and at a time when, on all sides, students, lecturers, whatever, they've all weaponized anger in some way, haven't they? The universities can't win.
That's true, but the reason they can't win is because there are people out there who don't value free speech. They only value free speech when it helps them. I have no problem with the student expressing her views, but talking about education, there is nothing educational about threatening somebody's job if they express a political opinion that you don't like. As a matter of fact, it reveals the fact that you may not be confident in your own arguments because you can't refute what he's saying. There are valid arguments against what he said. However, the idea that he should be under threat of losing his livelihood for saying something that you don't like, that's absurd. Let them both speak. It's not hard.
I'll put another example to you, Reese. The retail chain Target has been criticised for selling a book called Rhythm of Prayer. It includes a prayer from a black female author, just to tell our viewers, asking God to help her hate white people. That's not helpful, is it?
Actually, I think it is. Here's what's going on. This woman, Dr. Shaniqua Walker Barnes, is praying, writing a prayer to God based on all of the things that she's experienced as a black woman in this country. And she's praying to God for permission to hate white people based on their actions and the things that she's, not all of them, but she says there are certain white people, God, that I want your permission to allow me to hate them, because at this point she doesn't even have hate in her heart for them, but she's saying, you know, to the God in the sky, please allow me, because what I've seen these people, my people, experience at the hands of certain white people, whether it's the murder of Derek Chauvin, who killed a black man by sitting on his neck for 9 minutes and 46 seconds. Some of the acts historically that we've been through as a people or that we've seen, she's praying for permission from God to allow her to find some type of way to feel vindicated. And I think prayer is actually the best way to address it.
Jeff, we're calling out the companies and we're calling out the universities. What about the social networks here? Should they be taking some responsibility for what's being posted that might be inflammatory in some way? I know that they like to enjoy the pile-on because it brings in eyeballs and ad revenue.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to this particular story, I actually looked deeper into it. And if there is outrage over this, I'm not really understanding why. I may not agree with where she's coming from, but if she's taking her prayer about something that she is struggling with internally and she's taking that to God, well, open the Bible, look at the book of Psalms. You see that all through it. King David was saying all kinds of stuff that he shouldn't have been saying, but he was opening himself up to God. He was bearing his soul. And I'm not sure if this lady is a Christian or not, but when I read her thread on it, I saw her doing the same thing. I don't agree with hating all white people. I don't agree with the premise of her prayer, but guess what? We're human. We have certain beliefs. You know what? Social media, it's people, again, I always lean towards free speech. People should be able to express what they want. If somebody doesn't like what she's saying, again, they can use their free speech to refute it or to have a conversation. Social media is a cesspool. I mean, we have to admit that. But at the same time, I've also seen some productive conversations on social media. If we were all told to shut up, or if we're all being censored if we express uncomfortable views, we wouldn't be able to have those conversations.
And just as a couple of closing thoughts from both of you then, Reese, if we're going to talk about solving racism, that it has to be treated equally all around, otherwise there's no point and this argument will go on forever in memoriam.
No, what we've got to do is give black people a forum to deal with what's being done to them as a people, because America honestly better pray that black people continue to use prayer as a way to address the grievances that we suffered in this country. Because if we ever got off our knees and stopped praying and stopped begging for reparations and sought retribution and retaliation for what's happened to black people in America, why this country could be burned to the ground tomorrow. And so instead of, complaining about how black people choose to express what we've done, whether we kneel like Colin Kaepernick, we're criticized for that. If we pray about it like Dr. Barnes, we're criticized for that. Well, what do you exactly want black people to do when black people are being murdered in a state sanctioned by the police? What do you want them to do?
And Jeff, racism isn't equal because it's the bullied and the victim.
Well, I mean, there's truth to that. I mean, the thing is, racism is, we're never going to destroy racism. I mean, as long as people live, as long as ignorance thrives or is even present, we're going to have racism. So do I agree with pushing back against racism? Yes, definitely. When it comes to state-sanctioned violence against any American, but especially against the black community, yes, I'm for that. However, I don't think that we need to wait until racism is over to start building and to start investing in our communities, investing in black economics and doing the things that we need to do to get ahead. Racism isn't going anywhere, but we have fought back against racism before and we have prospered despite racism. So we need to do it now, just like we did in the past.
Well, both. I'm glad we got the chance to talk about it with you tonight. Reese Everson, Jeff Charles, have a great weekend. Thanks for joining us on RT.
Thank you.